What you're about to experience is an interview that was recorded a few hours ago. I attempted to edit out something that just didn't need to be in there, just information that was on my desktop screen, uh, phone numbers, and all that ridiculous stuff related to my work. And Streamlabs records in an FLV file format, and I'm too much of a noob to uh, to do all the conversion necessary to edit. I tried using Blender. I tried using some free software. It's all a waste of time. So I just wasted the last hour and a half trying to do that when I could have done what I'm about to do. But here we go. I hope you enjoy. I will try not to pause too much and let you experience this, and I'll experience it together again or something. So grab some popcorn. And here we go.
Hi, Devin.
Hello. May I call you Adam?
Sure, sure. That's for me.
Just it's a
Can you
long.
hear me okay? Can you see me okay?
I can see you fine. Yeah. My camera is here, and I can see you over here. So, um,
Okay, as long as you can hear me okay.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Wonderful technology. Where are you located?
So I'm in Iowa, United States,
Oh,
and
lovely.
yeah, middle of nowhere. And I haven't lived here very long, but looking forward to seeing snow. I lived in Florida for a while before moving here, but I've lived in several different locations. So all America, but um, I take it you used to live in America, is that right?
Yeah. I moved here when I was 30.
Okay,
So
very
I
cool.
moved I was working in Manhattan and I was not religious at all. And I grew up there and everything. And then when I was 30, it was 1991. So that's when I made Aliyah.
Okay,
So that's how it works. That's how it works. That's why my English is so good.
I see. I understand. I understand. All right, so yeah, let's just go ahead. I know it's pretty late there, getting later
No,
as we speak. So I wanted to go ahead and just jump right in and the just to let you know the purpose of my questions is basically to get a better understanding of things that I feel like I really don't understand from more perspectives than maybe one or two, basically. Um,
sure.
and I just want to maybe, besides just seeking better understanding of some of the things that are going on, um, maybe clarity. And also, um, I consider, based on what I've read and everything, you're uh, basically a material expert on some of these topics. So I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you and learn more. So
I don't know about expert, but I think because to be honest, I mean, I spent a lot of time in yeshiva and I spent a lot of time learning how to be a fairly mainstream Jew. But The rules are changing, I think, for Jews and Christians, and the world is changing,
Hmm.
um, for Jews and Christians. And I'm going places I never expected to go. I'm seeing things I never expected to see.
Okay.
So if you can help me figure it out, then maybe we'll get there together.
Gotcha. All right. So I'll start with what is the purpose of the 70 nations?
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you a little bit of backstory on that. There's been an effort for about a dozen years or more to reinstate the Sanhedrin. And the reason is really very simple. Jews have a very simple approach to the Bible, which is God tells us what to do and we do it. It's
Hmm.
what we call in Hebrew Naseh Nishma. Um, and it is actually forbidden for us to use a non-Bible based court system. So a group of rabbis got together, a group of actually very learned rabbis got together to reinstate the Sanhedrin, simply because we have to have we have to have a court system, and the court system we're told to use is either a court system of three. I think it's either 21 or 23. I'm not really sure, and 71 elders. So they have not really organized enough 71 elders, but it's a good effort so far, and they're kind of the problem is that they're not generally accepted. But for me, at least the way I learned, it's not a question of do you accept it? The question is what are we supposed to do? So anyway, that being said, they've done a lot of initiatives to um, bring the Bible back in line with what it should be when the Jews are in the land of Israel. One of them being they reinstated the Jubilee counting,
Hmm.
which there's no reason we shouldn't do it, but because the chief rabbinate and it was never done outside of Israel, so people never started doing it, but it really should be done. So they reinstated into be, and they just counted the new year today. It's the fifth year of the new Jubilee cycle.
Okay.
So this is very exciting stuff. And one of the things they realized was that the United Nations is, I mean, it comes from a couple different directions. One is they realized the United Nations was actually violating the Noahide commandments
Hmm.
on several different levels. Um, the there should be some way for nations to come together and cooperate in a Bible-based manner. So that used to be actually in the temple. On the Feast of the Tabernacles on Sukkot, the 70 nations would come
Hmm.
and they would work things out. And that's not happening these days.
Hmm.
The United Nations knows it should be a Bible-based organization. They have Bible quotes on the outside.
Hmm.
They're not afraid of the Bible. They should have, and which is why one of the first things they did was to establish Israel.
Hmm. Okay.
Because it should be Bible based. The nations should one nation under God, as we used to say when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Um, the idea of nation is divine. The the kings of Europe used to trace their lineage back to King David because they knew that that was where they got their mandate from. So the United Nations, they've done things like passed resolutions saying that euthanasia and abortion is a human right.
Yeah.
They've become a political tool, anti-Bible.
For the record,
Um,
I don't say yeah in agreement with that decision by any means. I'm extremely against abortion, especially abortion, but um, I certainly don't agree with euthanasia either, assisted suicide or anything of the like. But yeah, I'm strongly
there's
against
there's a
abortion.
connection. There's a connection between euthanasia and socialized medicine. They
Okay.
found one leads to the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, They found this in Europe and the Scandinavian countries. You remember they had that case even in Britain where the baby was put to death because he was allowed to die because against the will of the parents,
Hmm.
because it was socialized medicine.
Yeah.
So the Sanhedrin decided to try to organize an organization of 70 nations. 70 nations being the children of Noah, representing all the nations. It's also clearly against New World Order. It's not it's against the borderless countries. It's the 70 nations as each nation is distinct unto itself, with its own divine mandate.
Okay. Interesting.
We need yeah, we need 70 nations. We're not it's not just to come together as one nation under God. Each nation is unto itself.
Okay.
Um, okay, that's where it comes from. It's not religious per se, and it's also out of Zion Shogo teaching. It's should be based in Zion, not because it's an Israeli or Jewish organization, but that's where it used to be. In the days of the temple, that's where all the nations used to come on the Feast of the Tabernacles. Um,
Okay.
and that's how Solomon got the temple together without war. So that's what the whole idea behind the 70 nations is. And we're facing global challenges that can only be solved through I mean, it's so funny. Uh, you know, they say, okay, it's global warming. So what are you going to do? Oh, we'll take control. We're socialized, but we're going to be the central command.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? So no, it should be, there should be a way for nations to come together. So and the Sanhedrin is working towards that. They have rather grandiose visions, but to be really honest, last year, the organization, the meeting was held on the what Jewish tradition holds is the anniversary of the creation of the world, which
Hmm.
is 1 week before our New Year. This is something that the entire world should recognize. Um, I mean, not because it's Jewish, but they should recognize it in some way. We should celebrate the creation of the world and the Creator.
Hmm.
If you accept the Bible. Um,
Yeah.
so that's why they had it when they had it. And that's what they've been trying to organize. There are global challenges. If there's global warming, the UN has not really worked towards a solution, and even the people in America who say they're concerned about it haven't really moved forward. The Paris Accords led nowhere. It looked like a global effort, but it really led nowhere. And we need serious, dedicated people who, if you come together in Jerusalem as a nation, it'll be serious.
Hmm. Okay.
That's where the Organization of 70 Nations came from. And there are several, I think there are at least five South American nations who have sent official diplomats to sign on the effort. And it's kind of astounding, right? Right.
Yeah.
I see you look. It's kind of astounding that no one's talked about it. You'd think that, you know what I'm saying? It's like I'm the only one writing about it, which
Yeah.
I'm not so happy.
Yeah. That's part of why I asked, and that's why I'm asking these questions, is
So
because there's
you're the second journalist to be on top of this, okay, in the
okay.
entire world.
All right.
Okay.
Well, so you kind of answered this, but is there any official organization that is trying to ensure that the 70 nations purposes are carried through? You mentioned that the 70 nations organization currently isn't widely accepted, but that it's more so an independent effort. Um, so does that mean that it's not getting massive amounts of funding, basically,
Oh,
and
it's
it's
getting zero funding. It's
okay,
getting
okay,
zero funding, zero recognition from the government. Um,
Well,
Though
it's
I
made a
will say,
splash. I mean, it is talked about. It's not like
yes,
something that nobody knows about. So with little to no funding, uh, what is even propelling knowledge of it? That's kind of what I'm curious about.
well, first of all, I really think that it's just such a necessary, clearly necessary thing that speaks to people so deeply that they run to it.
Okay.
It's really a matter of seeing it in vision. It's the ambassador of Guatemala.
Mhm.
He's a big fan of this. Also, the ambassador of Honduras,
Mhm.
Mexico.
I noticed most,
There,
well, not most, but a lot of South American countries and everything. I noticed
South
that.
America.
Mhm.
I think there's two reasons. I think there's two reasons for that. There's one is that there's a woman, Devorah Lucker, um, who has been working tirelessly among the other things in her own life. She's also been, she's from Argentina. She lives in Israel. She goes back and she runs around meeting with these people and making these connections. But the thing is, once you lay it down in front of them, as Christians, they're into it.
Mhm.
As Christians,
Mhm.
they're not coming to pay homage to. They are coming to say they love Israel and want to be with Israel,
Mhm.
but I think that says more about who they are and not who we are.
Yeah.
So it's also because for some, I think, yeah, South America they have a certain vision. I keep asking them, and they're very strongly Christian, very strongly, um, um, I yes, also very strongly evangelical. So it very much talks to them, but
Mhm.
we have a lot of supporters in America, but Americans haven't quite caught on to it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned
Uh, I'm
Noahide
sorry, I
law.
didn't catch it.
Okay, yeah, you
I
mentioned.
I just lost you for a second.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yeah?
can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear
Okay,
you.
cool.
You keep cutting in and out.
Um,
Yeah.
all right, I'm using a headset and I can switch if necessary. So, um, you still hear me okay?
Okay.
Can you still hear
Yeah.
me? Okay, got it. All right. Who individually or
Yeah.
as a group do you think is most interested in the successful implementation of the Noahide laws?
Oy. Okay, that's a tough question, and I'll tell you why. For me, the Noahide laws are a no-brainer. For me, I would think that every Christian already follows the Noahide laws.
Hmm.
Um, Non-observant, non-religious people may not,
Yeah,
because one of the laws is don't murder. So if you're pro-abortion, you have a problem there.
sure.
If you're pro-euthanasia, you have a problem there. You're required to establish a court of law. It doesn't say which court of law. You're required to believe in God, um, and not to curse God. And there are a lot of non-religious people who curse God.
Hmm.
Um, that being said, it seems to be much more loaded an issue than I understand, and I don't understand why. There are a lot of Christians who are object to the Noahide laws, which I don't understand. It's not like, okay, you're following my rules now. What I'm trying to emphasize is it's not Jews ruling, and that's actually anti-Jewish.
Hmm.
We're not. It's forbidden for us to be imperialistic on a geographic level. We're not allowed to conquer. We're not allowed to live outside of Israel. It's not such a good thing for us to conquer land and increase the size of Israel. We have biblically mandated borders. We're Going out and proselytizing is forbidden, and converting is how do you say, discouraged. We're
Uh-huh.
supposed to discourage converts. So we don't, that's rabbinically mandated. So it's not like an attempt to impose a set of laws on anyone. We have the tradition, okay, it's in the oral law and it's not explicitly stated in the five books of Moses or in the prophets, but um, I mean, I think, like I said, I think the average Christian should like it, but there seems to be a lot of pushback, and I'm not really sure why from the Christians. I'm not really sure why there's pushback. Um,
Okay.
so
Gotcha. Well, speaking of the pushback, are there any? I know that several nations have signed regularly. In fact, I believe the United States, uh, I've heard since Kennedy, have signed off on the Noahide laws. Are there any specific countries that are resistant? Some examples that came to my mind, just hypothetically, would be like Saudi Arabia or China or India or maybe even Ethiopia. I'm
well,
curious.
they have bigger problems, but I think there are a lot of countries. There are several countries that are outlawing circumcision. There's several countries that are outlawing kosher slaughtering. These are not the Noahide laws per se, um, but it's a general anti-religious. There is an anti-religious push in a lot of countries,
Mhm.
and I think we have that in common. That these countries they generally are also anti-Christian, as well
Okay.
as
Yeah.
anti-Jewish. I mean,
Yeah.
the Jews the Jews are the canaries in the mine shaft. We go first, um, but then they go after religion in general. So there are definitely countries out there that are anti-religion, and like I said, we have a lot of um, common causes, including abortion, which is one issue, but it's part of a larger issue, which is accepting the Bible, accepting that there is a God. So
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah,
Um, and then back a little bit more with the Noahide laws, and which might demystify some of the issues that you were mentioning, like not understanding. How are non-Jews able to be right with God in accordance to the understanding of proponents of Noahide laws and all of that? And then a tack on to that question is animal sacrifice part of those requirements?
no, absolutely not. Uh, yeah, there were a lot of things. Okay, the Noahide laws, like I said, they're clearly um, good for Christians. Hold almost all of them, and to be really candid, open, and honest, and throw all the dirty laundry on the table. The one sticky one is the prohibition against idolatry, and
Yeah,
that is such a huge theological issue. It's it would be totally incorrect, even the most adamant Jew, if he said Christianity is idolatry, he's wrong. That's simply not accurate according to Jewish law. There are things that are idolatry. Um, that, but it's not universal in the Christian world. Um, I'm really dancing through a minefield here.
yeah, no, I get it.
What I
But,
mean,
I mean,
what I
just to be
mean is,
straightforward, I mean, when a Christian says Jesus is God, because uh, really to be a Christian, that's the requirement is to recognize that the divinity of Christ, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, to be the Son of God and God Himself, uh, the Messiah. Um, I guess the big question um, in a so that maybe is getting danced around is that what would classify as idolatry, basically.
right. To be honest, it's just like it's brain surgery. It's a hugely complicated issue from a Torah law perspective. I do know that people are considered Noahides even with the belief in Jesus. So it would be inaccurate to say that a belief in Jesus, as you just stated, it would be idolatry.
Okay,
But the rabbis who do work with the Noahides would be much better at explaining that. Like I said, it's
gotcha.
hugely complicated,
I understand.
and it would not be doing justice to the subject to just throw out, oh, it's all good. It's not all good, and people who who decide to observe the Noahide laws, and that's something important to them. They would need to do the investigation themselves. But like I said, a belief in Jesus does not mean you can't follow the Noahide laws. A belief in Jesus is not necessarily idolatry. And to be really honest, and if I'm going to throw all the dirty laundry on the table, I was shocked to find out that Christians say that Catholics are not Christian. There's even theological differences. I mean, most Jews don't understand that.
Well, I,
Um,
I used to, I'm still friends with, but I used to work under an Orthodox Jewish man, um, and he considered Reformed Jews to basically not be real Jews. I mean, I think that infighting, as it can be
right.
described, um, happens regularly amongst pretty much all of the world religions, but um, but his take as an Orthodox, very uh, strictly observant Orthodox Jew, um, he would laugh at how. Anyway, it's kind of funny,
I hear
but yeah, I
you.
mean,
And if
I'm
if
very
we
well
if we're going
aware
to
of the
do this
differences between Catholics and Protestants, as they're referred
right,
to,
and
because they
if
protest some of the things of the Catholic Church. For kicks and giggles, though, because you mentioned Jesus, I mean, could a Buddhist, just for kicks and giggles, could a Buddhist be compliant with the Noahide laws?
to I'm like I said, I'm not a rabbinic authority the um on the Noahide laws and what's considered
Okay,
idolatry.
okay. So that's
Um
episode two.
and
That's
and
that's
and
the
you
next
and you
interview.
really right, right.
I
I'd
got
love
you.
to hook you up with a rabbi who is an expert on that.
That would be really
Um
nice.
yeah,
But yeah, go ahead.
it's hugely complicated, and if we're going to do this and we want to make it real, it has to be treated with utmost integrity.
Okay,
And to
yeah,
just throw out feel good answers is not going to help anyone.
absolutely, I agree.
Um, so it has to be inspected, I think, from both sides. You
Okay.
know,
So
but as I said, I do know that there are people who believe in Jesus, and the rabbis have ruled that they are following the Noahide laws. So it's not exclusive.
there's some type of nuance there that would be
A
best
certain
best worked out in a conversation, basically.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
example, if you believe that Jesus is God, well, and you believe in the God of Abraham,
yeah,
as he's described in the Bible,
yeah.
then maybe you're just putting a different name on it. As I said, I don't know. The rab the This is a serious. There is a knowledge base that the rabbis access in order to make these judgments. It is a knowledge base. These Torah laws are knowledge based. They're not based on opinion,
They're
and
from
they,
the
they
Babylonian
make
Talmud,
judgments.
correct? From the Babylonian
Correct.
Talmud? Yeah, okay,
Correct.
just making
Correct.
sure. Um,
Yeah,
I read this somewhere, first time I ever heard of it, saw it. What is the Fortress of Zion?
I have never ever heard of that.
Okay. Um,
I've never reported on it. I can guarantee it. What is
yeah,
it?
yeah. There was a guy that had a video, apparently, that he He had your name in the title. So I think
Of
he was
course he did.
addressing you in the video somehow, a German guy.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, Ulf Diebel?
yeah, that's the one.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
And I don't know. I don't know anything about the guy except what I heard in the video that I didn't quite understand. And then he mentioned Fortress of Zion, and I was like, whoa, what is that? So okay.
right. Okay, so let me tell you what happens. What happens is I report real events.
Yeah.
I speak to the people, I interview them. I try to have as much integrity as I can as a reporter.
Yeah.
Um, and they're really astonishing events. I mean, the sacrifice on Mount Zion, that was astonishing.
Yeah.
And there are people who will take these real events and they will do with it what they will. With and I am not responsible for them, and I don't always agree with them. And
I understand.
I think that's what happened.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
I understand.
But the events are real,
Oh
right?
yeah. I I I saw the video. It was
Yep.
interesting. Um,
I want to explain something about that sacrifice.
yeah.
And I said I made a video, and I tried to explain this. Um, and there was a lot of it's amazing how people will misreport things. That was not. I understand that Jesus was the last sacrifice,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and and he fixed all the sins. I understand that. This was not an attempt to push that away or to overrule that.
Mhm.
It was absolutely not a sin offering. And it was not a prerequisite for being part of the organization of 70 nations. This was an attempt to renew the covenant of Noah, um, and the Noahide laws, in the manner that Noah did it when he came out of the ark.
Mhm.
Jews are forbidden from making a sacrifice outside of the Temple Mount. After King Solomon uh, sanctified his temple, that was from then on. That was the only place we could bring sacrifices. Before that, there was the tabernacle
Mhm.
that moved around a lot. After that, it was only in Jerusalem, only on the Temple Mount. So for us, it is absolutely forbidden to bring a sacrifice today that is not on the Temple Mount. Even though, according to the law, we are required to bring two daily sacrifices, and we are still required. We have the requirement upon us, and we're not fulfilling it. We also have the requirement upon us to bring the Paschal sacrifice, the Pesach sacrifice, and we're not being allowed to by our own government. That being said, um, Maimonides, Rambam does state specifically, and the Jewish law is that non-Jews are permitted to bring sacrifices wherever they want, whenever they want, and it's a praiseworthy thing that they receive merit for. So therefore, that sacrifice was not a sin offering. It was not a lamb. It was a goat to renew the um, the the covenant of Noah. Among the rabbis, there is a serious ongoing discussion about whether or not animal sacrifices will be renewed in the third temple. It's not yet clear whether that will be the case.
Hmm.
Whether the third temple necessarily means animal sacrifices. There will certainly be the wave offerings, the wheat offerings, the barley offerings, the wine, the libations. As a matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a reenactment of the water libation. It's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful. Um, so yeah, that being said, and personally, I'm not so clear on how I feel about it. That even though that was not a Jewish sacrifice, it was a sacrifice of the nations to the God of Abraham.
Mhm.
it was hugely transformative for me. It was hugely transformative, and I think everyone there, it was a powerful experience. I walked away from it a very changed person. Um, I'm I can't be ambivalent about anything having to do with my service to God and my personal role in his world. It's a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah.
It'll shake you to the core. So on that level, it was a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I think the original purpose of sacrifice was meant to not be something to be taken lightly. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So, this this question might seem a little out of place, but I thought it was um, relevant. How many years do you think before the main world powers join together and there's reasonable peace in the world? Do you think that there's
Ah,
any form of a vision for that or expectation?
um, I mean, how would I know other than the rabbis I speak to who have amazing vision, and they're
Hmm.
all very convinced that we are on the verge of global change.
Yeah,
And
I
I
I
mean,
I feel that way too. I just
how can
wonder
you
how many other
how can you
people feel
deny
that
that?
way.
Yeah, and I mean, world government's changing. I mean, we're feeling it right now in Israel. Our government's changing.
Hmm.
America, the government is going places I never saw it go before.
Mm,
It's becoming a huge battleground. It used to be like, we have our topics, but we're going to agree to disagree and let's move forward. And now it's just become so polarized. I
very
look at American
polarized, very
politics,
divisive.
yeah, and I'm like, what's going to happen? And it's amazing that the division in America is really love of Israel, love of God versus hatred of Israel and hatred of God. Hatred of God. Not ambivalence, not secularism, hatred of God. And it's also happening in Europe.
Oh, for
So
sure.
I yeah. And I wonder, it seems like something's got to give really soon. And I'm not talking 10 years. I'm talking either someone's got to turn down the flames or something's going to break and people are going to start, you know what I'm saying? It can't go on like this.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
my personal opinion. And that's also what I've heard from rabbis that,
gotcha. Well, that's kind of what I was getting at and what I partially expected to hear, but didn't know. So yeah, that's interesting.
and it's funny, but the issue of Israel, it's like a litmus test. It's not that Israel's, such an amazing place that people should flock to it and support it. And it's not that Jews are so special people that people should naturally love us. But we're really a litmus test. Generally speaking, right now, people who hate Israel, it's part of a big package. It's not just that they hate Israel. They also hate Israel. And they also hate God. They also hate. They're also pro-abortion. If you're anti-Israel, you're pro-abortion. You're pro euthanasia. You got this global warming thing going on. There's people are pushing themselves into packages,
Yeah.
and Israel is like a litmus test. There aren't any people who are anti-abortion and pro-Israel. It's like it doesn't it all goes together, and it's like, which is really, it's political, but it's more than political.
So
So
you you keep on using the phrase against Israel. What does that mean to you? In what does that look?
uh
How would you describe that? What does that look like?
um what were the three D's? It's there's this when I say people who dislike Israel, I mean, if there's criticism, I personally and in general welcome criticism. That's how you grow, that's how you improve.
Hmm.
But prejudice goes beyond that. Prejudice goes beyond that.
Oh, sure.
When if a person is willing to deny all of world history and say, how dare the Jews think that they belong in Jerusalem? Well, if you read world history, if you go to the Arch of Titus in Rome, you'll see that the Jews were always in Israel.
Hmm.
How far are you going to take this? If you want to say, well, Netanyahu's not a good guy, or there is a problem with the Palestinians that we have to cope with, okay. But if you say, hey, there's a genocide against the Palestinians, no, I'm sorry, there's not a genocide. Yet people say that. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? If you're willing to say the Jews have no right, the Jews are these Europeans who have no right to Israel. Well,
Mm.
you're denying an awful lot of human history in that sense. So if it's an even-handed, um, productive criticism, bring it on.
Okay.
But
Okay.
most of the criticism against Israel goes way beyond that. Goes way beyond that.
Yeah, I've
Even
I've heard those. I've also heard what you're referring to as moderate, good, productive debate. I've heard those talking points as well. So, not everybody seems to be willing to discuss those, but I'm glad to hear that some are. So,
right, right, and but really, what's crazy is the vast majority of the criticism is straight up anti-Semitic, and at this point, I think the problem I've seen a big. I never suffered anti-Semitism when I lived in America. I'm seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, and I think that's because um, Israel is very uncomfortable for a lot of people because Israel is the visible proof that, I mean, Israel shouldn't exist. We were gone for 2,000 years. This has never happened before,
hmm.
that after 2,000 years, a nation returned to its land. And the only reason it did happen was that God said it would happen. God promised it would happen. And bang, here, against all human nature, against all rules of nature, we're here. So people look at Israel, and that's why I'm proud to say, why do we belong here, along with the Palestinians, or why can't you just, and the BDS, they say from the river to the sea. They don't want Israel at all. Why not? Because we're a reminder that there's a judge
Yeah.
in heaven,
Okay.
and that's why they have to overreact to Israel, because we're the uncomfortable reminder.
Gotcha. Okay.
Against their will, against their will.
I un-
Yeah.
I get it. I understand. Um, there's a lot there. That's a really deep topic, for sure, because but
Yeah.
thankfully, at least as far as I'm concerned, it's not something that I'm emotionally charged by. Um, my personal perspective is just I love people and want to show the love of God to people. So that's just kind of where I come from, and I don't argue about sports, or I talk about not sports, but I talk about religious topics, theology, and stuff like that. But I really attempt, try my best to not go to war, basically. Um, this is a random question, and then we'll wrap it up because I know it's gotten only later for you, and I want to be able to let you go. And maybe we can do this again sometime. Uh,
I'd
I,
be happy.
I've appreciated
You're
this.
a nice. You're a nice guy.
Thank you. I appreciate this. This is the bonus questions. This is way out there. So forgive me if it's way too crazy. But are you familiar with the story about a man named Pantera as it might relate to Jesus Christ of Nazareth? Another pronunciation of the word Pantera would be Pandora, or Panthera, or Panther.
No. I
Allegedly,
mean, I know Pandora in Greek mythology.
Okay, yeah, not that Pandora, but Pandera or Pantera, um, from the Babylonian Talmud.
I never learned that.
Okay.
I never learned that.
Well,
I mean,
it's
I haven't
big.
learned the whole Babylonian Talmud.
I get it. I
It's a
hear
huge book.
rumor has it no one has, but that's that's just what I've
No,
heard.
that's not true. There are even people there are even very holy men who have memorized it. They're kind of scary, they're just like
I imagine.
they're on a different level. Um, yeah. I would like to say that I understand. Well, I don't understand it. Um, I know that Christians have a problem with aversion to the Babylonian Talmud. It's kind of funny. There's this one Christian broadcaster who refers to me as a Kabbalist wizard, which my wife is really very thrilled about because in order to learn Kabbalah, you have to be on a very high spiritual level. So she'd like to think that I am.
Almost like a compliment. Interesting. Okay.
There's yeah. Well, actually, he also said that Christian Zionists are in a marriage with Satan. He was an interesting broadcaster. Um,
I might
the,
I might know who
the
you're
the
talking
the
about.
Babylonian.
His name isn't the
Mm,
same as your name, is it? Is his name also Adam?
no, 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 no,
Oh, okay.
no, no,
Never mind then.
no. Okay, uh, and I'd rather not. I'd rather
That's
not
okay.
be bad about anyone.
Fine with me.
But the Talmud has it's goes into deep details and a lot. You can't take things out of context. And also, it's not just a matter of what's written; it's also a matter of what you do with it. And that's why when people, say, "Oh, Islam," they write about, death and killing, and then the response is, "Well, so does the Old Testament." But it says in the Talmud that the Sanhedrin that that killed one person in 70 years was called a bloody Sanhedrin. So it's a question of what you do with the law.
Hmm.
Uh, so even if it says something a little bit weird, it's like we bring it down to earth. That's our function. And there's a lot of different opinions. So there might be something um, not nice, inappropriate,
Yeah, there's a second.
that looks bad.
It's a second century alleged conspiracy, and I say alleged. Um, I can't seem to narrow down all the resources and everything. But I've read some names and stuff. But
Well,
uh,
second century is way after the Talmud.
it, what's that?
Way after the Talmud.
You mean before
Second
or
century is
after?
way after the Talmud. Well, the Talmud was put down a little bit after the temple. It was, I believe. When was the Babylonian Talmud written down? I mean, the actual traditions were around for hundreds of years. But let's see, when's the Babylonian? But second century is already very late. Um, oh gosh, I'm sorry. I I'm stand to be corrected.
No, it's okay.
According to this, the Babylonian it was compiled about the year 500. Uh, I didn't know that
No, it's
because
okay.
the teachings that they cite are from well before that,
Yes, because it
but it was
wasn't written
compiled
down
and
until.
actually it was an oral tradition.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So
But
I
this specific alleged conspiracy started about 100 years after the death of Jesus of Nazareth. Um, that
I've heard of him.
that
I know who you're referring
yeah
to.
that alleged that Jesus's father was actually just a Roman guard named Pantera, and that now um, Jesus is actually, because he was a um, illegitimate child, according to the conspiracy, um, that can only be tracked back to at least 100 years after. Um, anyway, that now Jesus
Uh,
is in
as far as
hell and all this other stuff, and this
as
has been
far as I'm aware of,
associated with the Babylonian Talmud historically. Where that citation is, what page number, which of the books, because I understand it's a series of books. I don't know exactly where. I only have a couple of names, and that's the context for that question. I My assumption is that that's not actually like mainstream. It may be part of history, but I don't, from what I can tell from the people I've conversed with, it doesn't seem to be mainstream uh, weekly discussion or even lifetime discussion for most people,
I
from what I can
first
tell.
of all, I've never heard of it. I spent 10 years learning. As far as I'm aware of, the Talmud never mentions Jesus. It never mentions Christians or Christianity. Uh, I'm I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
Hmm.
And I did hear that, um, and one of the reasons is we wrote it down when we were going. So if we had anything bad to say about the Christians or Jesus, that we would have we would have died. We would have been killed for it. So a lot of some things might have been taken out.
According to who? So it
Uh,
broke up. It broke up in the video just slightly, right?
if
So
we had anti-Christian or anti-Jesus things in the Talmud, the Talmud never would have existed, never would have lasted for 2,000 years of the exile. It wouldn't burned. We would have been killed.
why?
Um,
Why? I'm just curious.
because the church was very, there were inquisitions
Strong.
in
Okay, I
Spain and
got you.
Portugal.
Just it would have been so
It
controversial.
wasn't
You're
just there.
saying interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we were persecuted for other stuff. You know, we were persecuted. I mean, there were blood libels where they said, we were using Christian babies to make matzahs, which some people still believe today. And it's not written down anywhere, and it goes against Jewish law. It's so absurd.
Yeah,
Yet
cannibalism would be going pretty absurdly far, but
we're not allowed to eat blood. That's why we do. That's why we do. That's why we have kosher slaughtering, and then we salt the meat. It's because we're
yeah,
not allowed to eat the blood.
yeah,
And yet people say we specifically use the blood. So there's a lot of, I mean, we were persecuted for made up stuff. I mean, Protocols of the Elders of Zion was totally made up. We were persecuted for a lot of made up stuff. So I find it very difficult to believe that they would have left something in like that, if it had ever existed. I'm certainly not aware of it. I've certainly not heard it. As far as I know, the Talmud never never dealt with Jesus. I don't know any book that ever dealt with Jesus or Christianity,
gotcha.
in any way, except for Maimonides when he was talking about the laws of idolatry, because he had to talk about other religions. And the Talmud, when it was talking about other religions, it was talking about the straight up idolaters, the Romans and the pagans that were out there. Since Christianity really was not, you know, when the teachings, it was written down in the fourth century, I guess, but it was it the Talmud was compiled well before. So I've never heard of it. I'll be interested in looking into it. Um, but that's
Gotcha.
okay.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, Jews and Christians. Jews and Christians, we're coming from so far away. There's a lot of there's a lot of uh, revealing each other, that revealing of truth, revealing of history that we have to do for each other. I know nothing about Christians. I naturally assumed that Christians had this thing about hating Jews, and then I meet all these amazing Christian people who really love Israel.
Hmm.
Also met some who very much hate Israel, but they couch it in religious terms. Um,
Hmm.
and Christians actually know very little about Judaism, even though we both share a Bible.
Yeah. Well.
So there's a lot to
Yeah.
learn on both sides. On both sides.
Well, thank you for your time, and I was serious about getting more into the nitty gritty details with the Noahide laws and understanding that. So um, maybe we can
Uh,
keep in
I'll,
touch via email, and if you do have um, one of the
sure,
rabbis that might be interested in discussing,
sure,
that'd be really cool.
sure. Like I said, it's a technical thing, and you really need a technical expert. And that's not me. I'm a reporter.
I I, under- I understand. All right. Well, thank you for your time
Okay.
and good talking.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. You're a nice guy.
Thank you. Thank you. All righty. Bye for now.
Bye.
Well, well, well. Let's see. Can we do this? No, we can't, but at least you have my voice. That concludes an interview to try to attempt to better understand some about the 70 nations, some about the Noahide laws, and like I said, leave comments and we'll do it again sometime. But most importantly, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Well, you heard the man. I would appreciate comments, questions. Um, if you have thought-provoking questions that you'd like to ask, either Adam or one of the um, scholars, Talmudic scholars that I hope to interview in the coming days or weeks. Serious, thoughtful questions. Put them in the comments here. Put them in the comments. This was a first of its kind. Obviously, I've done group videos, but this is the first of its kind in a more, uh, well, Q&A. I was referred to as a journalist. That's a first in my life. But thank you for watching. If you made it this far, You must you must also be interested in learning more. One thing I can uh, say with confidence is that with relationship, by getting to know people, the more personal that is, the more we converse with them, the better we get to know them, the more we'll understand context, rationale, motive, expectations, plans, and things you might not expect, such as lack of organization. Stay faithful, though. And like I said before, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength.